Yes. All right. And then I am going to not sound like a robot while I read my beautiful intro here, okay? So in tonight's session, our host, Michelle Bryant, will be discussing big topics in picture books. And like I said in the email I sent out, this is not discussed enough. This is something like when we feel like we have a very sensitive topic that needs to be shared, we see that some books are out there, but we don't ever hear webinars. I mean, I haven't and Google topics on how to address this in a, what would you say, in a very gentle manner. So, oh, good. So I want to welcome everybody, both in person and those who are watching the recording. My name is Annie Harmon. I'm the co-regional advisor for the SCBWI Houston, aka Squibby. For anybody new, we've been meeting since May, usually on the fourth Tuesday of each month. At 6 o'clock, I had to check and see what time it was because we both know time is not my specialty, at 6 o'clock in the evening. So if you're working on a picture book and this sounds like something that would be helpful to you, go to SCBWI Houston events and register for the following picture book study so that we can get you the Zoom link the day of. I do want to say we don't know how long this is going to continue because Michelle may or may not have news for us down the line, but we do have at least one more coming. So while you're there, check out other events and see if any of those would also serve you well. SCBWI is committed to helping writers and improve their craft and find their community. So, little introduction. You guys have met, most of you guys have met our host, Michelle. She is serving as the new member coordinator. She is going to step down from that, but we love her just the same, especially because she provides so much value to us. She's awesome. She is a case manager, or she was actually. She just got a new job, so I'll just
as a case manager. I'm still that, just for a different agency.
Does this one also help homeless families?
Yeah. So this one is a single homeless adults in permanent supportive housing. Okay. So very similar. No kids.
I just love bringing that up because it really just shows the nuances of who you are. I mean, that's just beautiful. And she is a lifelong doodler. She is adorable with that, and she seems to really get picture books. So I am going to hand it over to her, and let's see what we got today.
Perfect. So I titled this presentation covering big topics for little readers, and I chose, I did a slight adjustment on one of the books because I realized two of them were kind of similar. So I hope you enjoy the books that we'll be reading today, and I'm curious to see if anyone has read any of them before. Perfect. So the study objective is to discuss some approaches to telling stories that are a bit darker, read an example from each category or approach, and then brainstorm how to incorporate these elements into our own work. So before we begin, so these picture book studies are never a one-size-fits-all approach. When we study a published author, the goal is to learn like how they did the approach, not to say what doesn't work necessarily. So if you do have a different idea from what's here, like feel free to explore it. So something to keep in mind, anyone who's raised children before or been around children, we've all been kids, little ones have big feelings too. So children still deal with heavy life situations, even though they may not be equipped to understand them. It doesn't make it any less real, and it can make it a lot more confusing. So there is a market for books processing emotions and telling stories with heavy themes, even though it feels like there may not be one, totally is. And there's lots of approaches to telling these type of stories, and we're going to cover several, but not all of them. So again, if you're like, oh, I wanted to do something different, like go for it. I just picked 4 among the many. So approach 1, and all these approaches are kind of going to have long titles. Approach 1 is a straightforward story that a child can relate to. So this would be a realistic story that mimics real life. It may or may not offer solutions to the problem, and it helps a child feel less alone in a specific situation. So the story from this category is Evelyn Del Rey is Moving Away. Delightful, yet a sad title. Okay. So Evelyn Del Rey is my mejor amiga, my numero uno best friend. Come play Daniela, she says, just like she always does. Just like today is any other day. So I bundle up across the street. A big truck with its mouth wide open is parked at the curb, ready to gobble up Evelyn's mirror with the stickers around the edge, her easel for painting on rainy days, and the sofa that we bounce on to get to the moon. We sneak past grouchy Mr. Miller's door and wave to Mr. Sue, who's feeding pigeons from the hall window. Senora Flores gives us each a cookie and says, "It's the big day," when we walk by. Our apartments are almost twins, just like us. That's why I already knew all the good places for hide and seek, and the spot behind the heater where we keep our special finds. But the walls in Evelyn's room are sunny yellow, while mine are pink like cotton candy. And I live with my mommy and a hamster, and she has a mommy, a puppy, and a cat. We are mostly the same, just like our apartments, but not after today. We find a still empty box near the door. In no time, I am a bus driver steering us all over the city. We play until the tables that were bus stops are gone and the beds that were skyscrapers have vanished too. When we look around, everything has disappeared except us. Soon, the truck outside rumbles off and there's a knock on the door. "Hide," we say, giggling just like we always do. But our mothers see us before we can slip away. "Time to go," Mommy says. Evelyn and I hold hands in that wide empty space. We lean back and start to spin in circles, faster and faster, until everything is a blur around us. Our fingers slip, but we don't let go until we wobble to the floor. "We can talk every day after school," I tell her, though the world is still whirling. "And you can visit me this summer," she says, "and spend the night." Evelyn will be in a new home that doesn't match mine, but I know that tomorrow everything will be different. Before we leave, I spot something in the corner left behind in the dust. It's the last of Evelyn's sparkly stickers. We go downstairs and I press a heart on her cheek and seal our promise. Then she does mine, just the same. We say "patata" while Mommy takes a photo. We do our secret handshake one more time, and then Evelyn hugs me hard. Evelyn Del Rey is moving away, so she won't be right here anymore. Mommy says not to be sad, that we will both make new friends. But when Evelyn waves one last time, the sticker still on her cheeks, I know that she will always be my first mejor amiga, my numero uno best friend, the one I will always know by heart. Okay. So that I don't know if anyone has read that book before.
I have not, and it got me down to the cockles of my heart.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the chat. Okay, well, if someone's chatting, I'm trying to find it. One sec. There we go. So that's a really interesting book. I don't think I have this written in the presentation, but so often it's like show don't tell. This book actually has really, I think, lyrical language to it, and it's done in such a way. To me, I feel like this is like a love story to a friend, like a goodbye. I feel like the author is old and not love story like romantic love, but like friendship love. And I feel like this is the goodbye that she did not have the language to deliver when she was a child. And it does. It has really beautiful, good language. Let's see. Hold on. So can we think of other like niche stories that may be helpful to help children feel less alone? Because in this one, there were a lot of little elements like the girl is crying in the car. And what I liked about this book having so much like the words and there's so much there is that I feel like it gives the child time to process their emotions like as they're going through the story. So in a lot of like picture books, I would feel like this is wordy, but I feel like for this story, it's very like appropriate. There's kind of a poignancy to it. Can y'all think of any examples of stories like, so this one obviously is about two best friends who are also neighbors moving away. So The Invisible Boy, I Don't Care. I think I've heard of that one. Does anyone have an idea like for the type of story, like maybe that doesn't exist? Like, you know what, sometimes kids have a hard time when they move schools, or like what other big life changes would a child have that a story about a child going through the same thing could be helpful? Like, what are those big emotional milestones that children have?
There's already lots of books about a new brother, sister.
Good.
There's about a new pet. There's divorce and moving. There's a lot of, I can't think of any that I haven't seen yet.
That's okay, because even thinking of examples like you can still have a story about moving that's presented in a different way. Because, okay, yeah, there may be 50 stories about someone moving, but nowadays, maybe there's an option for FaceTiming or video chatting. So you could write the story and have that be something, a solution that one of the characters comes up with in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, middle grade book by Sydney covering human trafficking. Absolutely. So yeah, and there can be like elements introduced in story that get pretty heavy, because like human trafficking, if it is something that a child can go through or in their family can go through, it kind of feels like it's up to the writer somewhere to find a way to tell the story that is appropriate. Because if we're leaving children like without resources because we don't know how to tell that story, or someone is, and we may not be the right author for it, of course. Like I work with people who are homeless, but even like with my experience there, I still may not be the right person to write a homeless story. Yeah, gender change. So how would y'all market a book like this? Like about moving? The things I immediately thought of is honestly a lot of these, the answer is going to be the same. If like a children's like library, like librarians can be like, ooh, this is good, or like counselors at schools, therapists. So if there are blogs that these sort of books are recommended, if you can get someone in that realm to maybe mention the book or ask them, hey, will you take a look at this? That may be something like, hey, I'll send you a copy, or see if the publisher will send like advanced copy to try to like get some get things moving. Then I think word of mouth can be really valuable, even though it is something niche. Tiffany said, market is changing, friendships, difficult conversations. Exactly. Changing friendships and relationships, that can be confusing because a child will have that first experience of a friend talking behind their back, a friend betraying them. And adults may begin to get used to that, hopefully not, but it happens. But every experience a child's going to have is going to be an experience for the first time. Yeah, Where You Are Brave by Patsy Lowe is about moving and worrying. Excellent one. So let me go to the next book here. I'm going to minimize the chat. Okay, Approach 2 is a niche story that represents like a common struggle. So this one is a more uncommon situation, but it covers a broader theme that children may still be able to relate to. And it can help children exercise empathy and learn to put themselves in other shoes while still maybe finding some value for themselves and being like, wait a minute, I've been through that kind of, but in a different way, but I kind of feel like I understand where that kid is coming from. So I don't know how many of you have read this book. It is a little bit leaning towards like, not a little bit, it's leaning towards like the LGBT side of things. But I feel like I said, other kids can kind of relate to the character in the story. So it's My Dad Has a Shadow That's Blue as Can Be. And there's nothing but blue in my whole family tree. But mine is quite different. It's not what you think. For mine is not blue. My shadow is pink. My shadow loves ponies and books and pink toys, princesses, fairies, and things not for boys. But there's one thing it likes most I have found. It loves wearing dresses and dancing around. It spins and it sparkles and it twirls through the air, then stops as my dad walks in with a glare. It will turn blue one of these days. Don't worry, he says. It is just a phase. My dad's shadow is blue. It is big, it is strong, but when I stand with it, I just feel so wrong. I wish mine was blue like all the others. I wish mine was blue like my dad and my brothers. I'd be part of the group of that, there's no doubt, but I cannot stand in when my shadow stands out. Now, things are all changing and that is not cool. I'm ready to start my first day at school. You'll need pencils and books, and lunch you must bring. Dress up with a shadow in its favorite thing. My heart skips a beat as I put on a dress and I look at my dad, who is anxious and stressed. He takes me to class and I turn to say bye. His face is all worried and there's fear in his eyes. So I step in the doorway and I puff out my chest. When a thing is clear, I'm not like the rest. I try to say hi, but my voice is too quiet. The kids turn around in the room. It goes silent. I run out the door and I push past my dad. I run in my house feeling angry and sad. If my shadow was blue, I'd be there making friends. I'd be laughing and playing and drawing with pens. I rip off my dress, throw it on the floor. I won't wear it again. Not ever, no more. Just then at my door came a soft little knock. It's my dad walking in, and I look up in shock. Both he and his shadow and dress as they stood with shimmering seams and pink sparkling hoods. He speaks in a voice that's quite soft but is stern. Pick up that dress. You must listen and learn. Your shadow is pink. I see now it's true. It's not just your shadow. It's your innermost you. He showed me the photos of parents and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and others. We've all had a shadow that's hidden from eyes. Sometimes our shadow, it lives in disguise. His shadow loves painting and fashion and art. Her shadow loves engines and powerful cars. His shadow loves dance when it turns and twirls. Her shadow, she hides it. Her shadow likes girls. His shadow loves theater and acting in plays. Her shadow loves science and planets and space. Your shadow is you, and pink it will be. So stand up with your shadow and yell, this is me. And some they will love you and some they will not. But those that do love you, they'll love you a lot. So put on that dress and get back to school. If someone won't like you, then they are the fool. My heart nearly burst and my shadow it soared. I picked up the dress and I wore it once more. We ran out the door, this time holding hands, my dad and our shadows. Together we stand. I stride in my class and puff out my chest. I may be different, but different is best. I join a small group, though, and I don't blend. They look up and smile. Will you be our friend? So when I said it's a story that's kind of like broadly appealing, like in that the theme. Now I understand there are people who, like, due to different like ideologies or beliefs, they may not want their child reading the specific book, and I'm not referring to broadly appealing in that way. I mean, for a child, there's a theme to this of not feeling like fitting in, that there's an incongruity between like what the person seems like and some of their topics and interests don't quite coincide like with maybe how people view them, not feeling like they're fitting in with family. Are y'all kind of seeing, like, when I said there's a broad like empathy that a child who may not be like transgender or LGBT or whatever may still be able to be like, I kind of get where they're coming from because I'm a girl and I like bugs and everyone thinks that's gross, but I love bugs.
I think it does. It does. I mean, they definitely were making it clear that his pink was a very specific pink, but it is easy to see how we are all pink in different ways.
Right.
What I love though is that how it was done. Oh God, I don't have the words for this, but he kind of, it's funny because it's the shadow, but the story was also sort of a shadow of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was layered in such a way that it didn't slap you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that.
It is. And like, I'll be honest, like I thought of this book when whenever we talked about this topic, but I was like, I don't know, some people may not. But then I was like, wait, it's okay, because there's still things that can be found in a story. And the cool thing about like picture books is parents or guardians or the adults, they're there too, and they can also kind of be like, this kind of is like whenever, and then they'll say like the child went through something, so the parents can also help guide the story around and pull it in. So even though a story might be quite specific, if it covers a broader theme and it's present, because this boy, the pink shadow, but then there's this entire section in the middle where they discuss a bunch of different examples. There's a girl who's a cheerleader, but her shadow likes race cars. There's another girl who's doing something, and then she likes science and space. And so the middle section begins to give other examples and other ways that someone, like a child, might feel this way. And so that's something to keep in mind. Is like, I want to tell a specific story, but I think it's too specific. Well, then there might be a way to make it broader. And so I think it being niche, it can be presented in a way that's broad, because there is like there's a wider umbrella of feeling. Like someone may be sad for a very specific reason, but they are sad. And a lot of people can relate to being sad. If it's loss, okay, this person lost their hamster. Well, a lot of kids may not have ever had a hamster, but they have experienced loss in their life. So don't count out your story, especially if it's something that you resonate with and you want to write a story about just because it feels small or feels too narrow. So revisit it and work through it and be like, maybe there's more I can do there. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
Perfect. Susan said, do you think having this book written in rhyme makes it easier to read in here? I feel like the book was honestly a little too long. There's a part with the dad, and I don't know if you heard it in my tone of like when I was reading it, that I felt like that's where the book should have ended. I feel like it had like 2 extra pages that I wish kind of would have been gone. I like the mouth feel of certain parts was really nice. Like the rhythm was really good and it felt really solid. And then at some points I felt like it dragged a little bit. So rhyme is so tricky, and there were some parts that was like an A+ to read, and then there's some parts that I felt like dragged a little bit. But overall, I think the concept, the story, the rhyme, I think everything's really worked really well. Like there was the rhyme on, I don't think it was necessary. There was a rhyme on a piece of paper. I don't think that was necessary, and it was a forced rhyme. And I think it would have been fine. Like the paper didn't have to rhyme. Because you can, like when you have those, and this is more of an illustrative thing, whenever there's background elements, you can draw them in a way that it's very clear that it's not a part of the text, because the text has a certain font to it. And if you can make it to where the reader like that knows they don't have to read it. So what sort of lessons do you think a child could learn from this story? Because it comes down to how the child connects with darker stories, because if they don't connect, there's kind of not a point in having them. Or
well,
yes.
it's obviously about being yourself, but that's why I didn't quite get why the dad wore pink, because he should still be himself. He should accept his son as he is, but he shouldn't change himself. So that kind of, I think that would be confusing to a kid. But I thought he should have just accepted the son, but not like changed himself. I don't know.
I think because it would have been such a strong feeling of not fitting in due to wearing the dress in front of everyone else. And I think that would have been such an impactful moment. And the dad, I think beginning to accept the son quietly wouldn't have been enough to undo him telling him over and over, this is a phase. I think because he had built up such resistance to it, he needed to have something that equaled the amount of resistance he showed in one action. And I think that not only the dad, but the shadow, which is the true self, he could see that not only did his dad say the thing, but his true self was also showing the support. And I think the kid would get it, because the next day the dad's not like going to wear a tutu every day, and his dad's a lovely guy. So I think in that regard, and if a child's confused, they'll be like, why'd the dad wear it? And they'll ask, and then you can, say that was his way of showing support. And he doesn't normally wear that, but he wanted to, that's his kind of his way of saying sorry.
But his dad's shadow did not change color. It was just the outfit he chose to wear in solid green, right? Yeah.
I believe so. We can let's see if I go back. Yes. So the dad's wearing pink as an outward show of support, but the shadow is still the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So the pink, you did see the pink and it was there, but it was just the and even there, yeah, this is kind of where, and then there, that's the pink you might have seen as well, is the dad having the dad's shadow having the sun shadow on his back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the next approach is helping process emotions with solid metaphors. I'm not reading this book, Ruby Finds a Worry, but this book is also an example in this category, and I was very close to using it. This one can be very helpful for younger readers, because the metaphor, like the last one had a visual metaphor, but this one, you'll see it kind of like follows through in a very like clear way and is a little less like complex. These can offer exercises that can be applicable in the real world. And I think these are tools that can be helpful for like school counselors, maybe therapists, or parents that are like trying to help their kids learn. So I love this book. This is probably one of my top 5 picture book, favorite picture books. It's called Allie All Along. And I like this part. It's like deep down blue, fire, fury, explosion red, simmering storm green, and flaming, raging flame orange. Snap, Allie's crayon broke. I blinked. She was suddenly furious, fuming, frustrated, and so angry. She stomped, smashed, crashed, and threw a tantrum, a fuss, and a fit. I gave her a pillow to punch so she wouldn't break other stuff. That got the worst of the angry off. Still, Allie was ferocious, fierce, and very angry. I asked her why, but she wouldn't say, so I told her to squeeze her favorite toy as tight as she could. He didn't mind. It looked like it helped a little. But Allie was still irritable and angry. Maybe she didn't even know why. I feel that way too sometimes. So I suggested try to take a deep breath, but don't hold it in too long. Pretend that my fingers are candles and you can blow them out. That seemed to help some more. Then she was just plain old regular angry and maybe a little sad too. I helped her count backward from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The rest of the angry fell away. And there she was. Hug, please. I knew she was in there all along. That's it. Very simple. And that's why I said it's for younger readers. How chatty the shadow one was, it was really nice, but this one, it just is more compact.
I was amazed at how short they kept that one. Like it was over before I knew it. Like, wow.
It was. And that's why I said a really solid metaphor, because and what's really cool about something like this is, now I don't know what year it came out. I'm presuming after Inside Out, but Inside Out plays around with colors and emotions. And so this isn't copying that, but you can kind of like, if you can presume certain types of media that children are consuming, you can kind of build upon that without it being like an artistic theft. You can say, you know what, I know they're probably doing Inside Out, so this will build upon that idea. And I feel like, and these aren't really solid, I like blowing out fingers. And the idea that's introduced here, or maybe reinforced, is that there are things that, like, anger is in levels, which we can kind of agree. And we even have different words. Yeah, The Color Monster is a story about emotions. I haven't seen that one, but I think that sounds like it's very in line with this approach. But it helps children play around with the idea that there's, different levels to mad, and you can kind of identify them and what you call them, and that there are different exercises you can try. And it's okay if you try an exercise and now you're not calm. It's okay if you step down, as long as you're doing things and not hurting anyone. And so it can kind of introduce a lot of different little things, and it can give the child like a point of reference. Oh, are you, mad like Allie? And I like that there's the sadness underneath, but it's expressing itself as anger. And so there's really a lot here presented in a very simple way. Let me see. So can we think, and I know off topic or offhand, it's probably hard to think of any other like good metaphors for emotions, or are there any other emotions that you would like to see in a book? Like, is there a specific emotion that maybe a child that has had trouble with? I know a lot of kids, anger can be tricky. Some kids avoid feeling sad, or they're sad as mad. Annie, was there anything that jealousy is a good one. Was there anything you wish that you're like, oh my gosh, it would have been nice for my kids if we'd had blank?
No, I'm not going to be helpful here. Actually, what I'm doing right now is scribbling down a story idea, because every time I come to one of these picture book discussions, I end up with another story idea.
Delightful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit, because since this is discussion time, like jealousy. So I know there's the thing like green with envy. And the cool thing is green in Inside Out is discussed. So you don't have to worry about Disney with that regard. The book that I had the screen or the on the slide earlier, that one is about like nervousness and it grows. It's this thing, but with jealousy, it could be something that's talking to someone in their ear, a kid, or it could be a little alien that's, there's a new kid and this like alien showed up at the same time. And it's just I know sometimes it's like we worry about things because I know like as mentioned earlier, something is confusing for kids, but they're actually pretty good at taking things kind of at face value and like thinking through concepts without, like, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this suspension of disbelief. Kids are great at that. It's like, okay, this is happening there, and they're like, all right, bet, let's go. And it's just like adults are like, wait a minute. And as I rewatch like movies that I watched, as like I watched Lilo and Stitch the other day, and I was like, hold on, like CPS is there and this, and Nani, what are you doing? Why'd you leave Lilo there? And we have to remember that kids don't consume media in the same way that we do. And to some extent, like the publishers, whenever they're looking like for picture books, that's something they balance with both of those. Parents are reading, kids are reading. And so we also have to balance that out. We have to like wear a kid hat and then a parent hat and try to see the scales, like how they tip between the two. And then how do you think this book appealed to younger readers?
I think it has great appeal because it gives them permission to feel their feelings.
Yes, I would agree. So there's openness and acceptance. I think the length is good. I think it's funny. I think that it's like bright and engaging. I think it has that element that kids like if they know something the character doesn't. They know that Allie's mad about the crayon. As they're reading it several times, they'll probably eventually pick up on that. And it gives them that like nice little mini feeling of like superiority that kids can like in books. But I don't know, that's one of my favorites. Okay, so this is the last approach. I'm going to call this read with adult. This one does not shy away from showing tough elements, including like the effects of war. The text is often longer and it can be presumed that adult will assist with reading. These can be some of those nonfiction books that are a little bit longer. And sometimes these can be, because it can go above 7 years old. There might be 8-year-olds reading these as well. I don't know if y'all have heard of this book, The Catman of Aleppo. This is one of my favorite illustrators. She doesn't always illustrate. She does a lot of like, not spot illustrations, but specialty illustrations. And this is like, for example, Magic the Gathering. She illustrated a couple of their cards. So she does a little bit of everything, but she did illustrate this entire book, which is cool. Her name's Yuko Shimizu. Oh, and this is about a man in Syria. This is a letter from him at the beginning. The story is about cats and war and people, but most of all is a story about love. Because of my love for cats, I'm now helping all kinds of animals, as well as people and children orphaned from the war that gripped my country of Syria since March 2011. Generous people from everywhere are helping me support and improve my community. We now have an orphanage caring for many children and clinics and shelters helping many animals. You can help too. Remember, both people and animals suffer pain, and all of them deserve compassion. Together, we can make the world a better place. So you'll be surprised how deep this one goes on some of the illustrations. And I might butcher his first name, but Allah, I'm gonna say it like that, and apologies if I mispronounce it. Allah loves the city of Aleppo. He loves its narrow alleys and covered bazaars, selling pistachios, jasmine soap, and green za'atar. He loves the boiled corn and dried figs offered on the street. Most of all, he loves the people of Aleppo. They are gentle, polite, and loving like him. Even when war comes to Aleppo, Allah doesn't flee like so many others. He continues to work as an ambulance driver. He swerves through rubbled streets and carries the wounded to safety. He comforts and holds them. Allah has a big heart. Allah's work is important, but he misses his loved ones. Where are they now? Are they safe? He misses the way things used to be before the war. Aleppo city center no longer echoes with the rich, exciting sounds of copper pot pounding and traditional sword sharpening. His neighborhood is empty. except for the many cats left behind. The abandoned cats roam crumpled buildings and prowl filthy alleyways for food. Their homes have been destroyed, and now no one is left to love them and stroke their backs. No one is there to give them food and water. The cat's lonely, confused faces remind Alaa of the loved ones he has lost. So many goodbyes, so many people he hasn't been able to help. So many days he feels lonely and confused too. On his way home from work, Alaa stops the ambulance. 2 cats call to him from the branches of an ancient olive tree. 3 more peek from a Syrian juniper tree. Alaa's big heart swells with love for them. Bombs may still fall, and his loved ones may never come back to Aleppo. But there is something he can do. He can look after the cats. After his shift the next day, Alaa uses the little money he has to buy fresh meat. When he unwraps the meat, the cats raise their heads and sniff the air. They are extra hungry. Ta'e ata ata, Alaa calls. Here, kitty kitty. Dozen cats rush toward him, their tails high. He gives them bits of meat and talks softly to them. The cats chew and purr, purr and chew. Soon their bellies are full, and so is Alaa's heart. He smiles and pets the cats, and they love him back. He brings meat and water for the cats every day. A dozen turns into 20, and 20 turns into 50. He can no longer care for the cats alone. I need a place to keep them safe, he tells his remaining neighbors. Together we can save them all. Word spreads and volunteers arrive. Donations pour in from many countries. Everyone wants to help the cats of Aleppo. Alaa collects enough money to buy a building with a shaded courtyard. He names the sanctuary the House of Cats Ernesto in memory of a friend's beloved cat. Soon cats are everywhere. Orange cats, striped cats, white cats, gray cats, and black cats. For every cat, there's a dish of food and a bowl of water. Now when people must leave Aleppo, they bring their cats to Alaa before they go. Hope and love fill people's hearts when they learn about the sanctuary's success, and they send more money. With so much support, Alaa is able to rescue other animals too. He builds a playground for the children still living in Aleppo. He helps dig a well so everyone can have fresh water. He distributes fruit, mamoul, and barzak cookies to the people he meets. Alaa's big heart is happy. All he did was love the cats, and that love multiplied and multiplied again. He still misses his loved ones and the way Aleppo used to be before the war, but now Alaa is known around the world as the Catman of Aleppo. Alaa loves the city of Aleppo. He hopes one day soon its bazaar selling pistachios and jasmine soap will return, and he can enjoy eating boiled corn and dried figs. Meanwhile, he loves the sanctuary's courtyard filled with fat, sleepy-eyed cats. There's no place he'd rather be. Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
But heavy. So when I read that, I kind of presumed that an adult would probably be reading that with the child. Like the reading level, the length of the sentences, the words on the page. I feel like a 6-year-old's probably, I mean, maybe, depends on the 6-year-old's probably not reading that book. And so that's why I put this as a separate approach, is presuming that, maybe a parent wants to get into some of these topics. And one of the things I noticed about this book is it has an almost like theatrical arc to it. The word count, that's a good question. I would, if I dared to venture, I would say at least in 800 to 1,000, but I didn't sit and count. I should have. But it, I think the page count might even be above the standard as well. But like I said, with some of the nonfiction books, those can sometimes get into like 40. And just since the topics are covered a little bit different, but but the printing standard are in like series of 8, so 32, 40. That's
You know
usually
what? Google could be lying its little head off, but right here on teaching books, it says the word count is 682.
682. Okay. That's good. So that's actually not that bad then. It's a little long for a modern picture book. A lot of them one of them shorter and shorter. But I think the reason they're able to cover, and that's something to keep in mind when covering topics, is it needs, I think, to have a little brightness at the end. I know in the real world there's not always like happy endings.
Sit down. The words
but
that say your speaker is not working. Please check your connection. So we know they were working.
Yeah.
I think we just had a mic issue.
You hit that, yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't
So
have anything.
I think part of the reason that
Select a microphone.
this still kind of feel, it can also kind of feel like a picture book, is even though it covers something so heavy, and like I said, the
So
illustrations are pretty intense. You've got children wrapped up in bandages, you've got like devastation everywhere. But the story turns to such a bright place. And so I think finding these stories that do have the bright side of things, even though I understand, like, as adults, we know that there's not always that, can be helpful for children and can make it to where it's not like too frightening for them. Those of you with kids, is this a book, like, at what age, based on your child, would you have felt comfortable covering this type of book? Or this specific book?
Yeah, I think 7 probably was right. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, maybe. I
Mhm.
really don't know my grades that much.
I
But
agree.
yeah, but I'm trying to
agree.
picture when my son was young, where I would feel comfortable. And this is definitely this is definitely a book that is a conversation starter. I think that's its entire purpose, is it starts the conversation in a safe way.
Or if they've already heard about an issue, then you can bring in the book to kind of explain it a little.
Right,
maybe
like if they
about it.
walked by and saw on CNN, like
Yeah.
some of these kids, like, I know this happened after 9/11, but 9/11, a lot of, like, I was like 11 when it happened, but there were kids who were 6 and 7 years old seeing the Twin Towers, like, on TV over and over again, falling and falling and falling. And so even 5-year-olds. So I know it feels like, oh, well, what age do you introduce war? Well, sometimes you have to do it early because war was introduced without the parent being able to, like, you know, and it's something that can just come up. Or maybe at Thanksgiving, someone's talking about it and maybe they fixate on it. What is it? What is it? What is it? Because they hear something. So sometimes it's like, oh gosh, now I got to find a book about war. So it's okay to cover these topics. It's just how you do it. And it's just, I find it interesting how intense they went with some of the illustrations, like, go back. That one.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
And even that, like, to go from this bright, beautiful, happy, and she's a very, like, well-trained illustrator, into boom. Because you can see, like, you have that really nice perspective and then it goes flat. It's effective, like you're pulled into it. But let's see. What was I gonna say? It's very rich, but it creates a sense of loss, I think, for the reader who's never even seen or maybe been to Syria, because you can see how much it changes. And this is, you got people in wheelchairs, like, cars exploded, and a child might recognize that, hey, that's a car. And I think for parents, like, this would be something that's pretty, it would take some level of, like, bravery to share this with a child. But I think children are capable, it depends on the child and the age specific, they're capable of covering these things, and they're aware of loss and violence to some extent. And so I know that sometimes it's like, oh, don't cover that, the picture book, the publishers won't like it. And this, oh, I remember now, on the cover, yeah, this one, a Caldecott Honor book. And that's a really big honor. So do we think in these type of, like, okay, so as a writer, like, how would someone approach these type of stories with care?
I think what he did so smartly here is that he took the heaviest concept, but he tampered it with love. Like, he found a positive, there's no positive aspect here, but he found something positive to speak about while showing the heaviness.
Yeah, they managed to end the story on hope and growth and rebuilding. And I think, like I said, that's a theatrical, almost like cinematic, like, arc. I don't know if y'all have heard of Save the Cat, but I think it's literally Save the Cat. Do we feel that when it comes to these type of very heavy topics, like, is it best, and again, I'm generalizing here, like, is it helpful to find these real stories?
I think so.
I think so too.
I think it's needed. But the way he approached it is through the cats. Sort of
Mhm.
like a friendly, even though I consider it more nonfiction, yeah. Because he's doing this situation, but because it's leaning on the cats, something soft, something nice, something everyone loves.
I was so delighted whenever I heard this book when because I follow Yuko on social media, and I had heard of the story of the Catman of Aleppo, and then I was familiar with her, and then when they came together, I knew it was going to be incredible, and I'm so delighted that they made this book. That was hold on that one sec. There we go. Sorry, some of my old slides were, I guess, hidden in there. Just ignore that. What topics do we feel are maybe underrepresented in children's books that could be helpful? So one of the ones I maybe identified is, I know that kids aren't supposed to be on social media until they're like, what, 12 or 13, but do we feel that maybe that's an area, and like the internet, where would we like to see more books?
I'm working on one, but it
Mhm.
hasn't hit it. I presented it, but it's which I think that needs to be
We
is,
can do that at the end when we're recording. I
but
don't go too
what I'm
much
saying
into our
is
stories. Mhm.
the shootings that's happening.
Oh, yes. Oh,
That's
yes.
what I'm trying to say
Oh,
is
okay, good.
how they listen to the news, how they report it, what kids are internalizing, especially now that it's just so rampant. You know, it's
Absolutely.
computer, it's the TV, it's everywhere you see it. And parents are not aware that it's there, and they're more aware than what they think, than when I was a child.
And that's what I said about like 9/11 and the
Mm.
Twin Towers. I don't think as many parents realized how much of that, like the younger, like millennial children were internalizing. Especially that would have been like 5, we're from 4 to like 6 years old, that would have been seeing it over and over again without the context that the adults have about what is happening. They may not realize, oh, that's 1,000 miles away. They may think they're in danger and it's happening there, because they don't have the knowledge and the ability to logic and conceptualize and understand the context of what's happening. So I definitely agree, Maria, like especially with shootings and things of that nature. Really anything that's on TV that they may, and those are those situations I said that a child may fixate because they received information earlier than they meant, that the parent might have to pull out a book like this pretty early on. Where would y'all how would y'all go about choosing the right place to send a manuscript for this type of like these heavier stories? What sort of things would you research for sending the manuscript?
There are some publishers that deal with that,
Mhm.
that work with a lot of counseling.
Good.
Like what's the name? Light. Forgot the name of it. Julia C. Cook. She used to write books. Julia Cook
Mhm.
did a lot of counseling books. I was a former counselor, so yeah.
Yes, so sometimes there are like places that specialize in like more I don't know if that's all they do, but there are some that will accept those type of books and are maybe more likely to publish it. And sometimes it's like the tricky thing with, I think, sending off like manuscripts and such is you don't always know what other books they're about to release or what they're looking for, and that's just sometimes you just have to kind of send it out and hope for the best. But researching places that are more likely to publish something like that can be helpful. What concerns would you have about writing a heavy manuscript? What sort of things would you be thinking about or trying to parse out?
Are these questions for everybody or?
Yeah.
just- Okay. I think a big question will be what makes you the writer of this story?
Ooh.
It seems the editors or agents really want you vested into the topic you choose. That would be my first concern. Although, if you think about it, it is maybe best to send out some feelers in the
Mhm.
marketplace. Just talking to people who have had experience with issue stories, and can reflect on that. I've had this experience with a couple of pieces.
Mhm.
So it's sort of painful.
It can be.
But I think some you get more confident. You definitely get more confident as you research other people's work and their own experience. And I couldn't like, but anyway, also what was I gonna say? Oh, I'll pass on it. Okay, so yeah, I would say that would be one concern. How about y'all?
Definitely.
Do y'all have any?
Sue said in the chat, story structure, because a right structure can make the heavy topic light. I'd agree with that. Like the Catman of Aleppo, them like covering the war in Syria by choosing that storyline did a lot, for sure. I mean, it's still heavy, but it gave it a positive like flow.
Yeah, I was going to copy and say the exact same thing because you were just talking about our I think it was Maria. Maria, was that you talking about gun control as a dark topic? I would not choose the first example of our readings for that. I would not do a straight up, this is a slice of life's kind of story. I would definitely try to mix it in with maybe metaphors or something soft-hearted to put that message out there.
Another thing I noticed is that a lighter way is a lot of times we want to use animals, depict the animal as a character, and a lot of the publishers are saying we don't want animals, we want real life people. And that's what I've confronted. They say I had one with as a giraffe. They said, well, we prefer it to rather be a boy or a girl. So we tend to want to put animals because first children love animals. The other thing, it brings a lightheartedness to it, but they're really looking for life characters.
They do, but you've got things like Grumpy Monkey and like the Pigeon series, and you've got Pete the Cat. So if you feel that it makes the story less scary for the child, but they can still get it if it's presented in that way and it's justified, you can justify it, and you try it the other way and it just isn't as, it doesn't feel right, then I'm sure there are stories where presenting it that way can be useful. So try it both ways and see which ways feels better. And then if they're like, well, then it can be like, okay, we'll look at both, but
What I've heard from agents is, yes, they are basically saying that, but the reason they're saying that is because a lot of people don't know how to do it in a way that feels more natural. It feels more forced. So they're trying to direct people to go in a way that they feel are going to be, it's going to be a better match for them. So if you really feel like you could write that story with the animal, don't let the fact that the majority are saying that they're not handling it stop you, because there's always somebody who is, and yes, children are drawn to it.
It's the same thing with rhyme. They'll say, oh, no rhyme, but then there's rhyming books that are published every year. The thing is that they receive so many rhyming picture book manuscripts that aren't up to par, but that doesn't mean they won't publish it. And so the barrier for entry may be a little bit higher on the animal one, but if you can justify it in saying I'm covering a heavy topic and this you feel like this makes it, will make it more palatable for parents as well, then you can, I guess I'm saying you have to listen to like obviously what agents say, but I don't think a catch-all makes sense in maybe this regard, because there are books published every year with animal characters in them, very popular ones. But if they're like, hey, rewrite this with human characters, then we'll resubmit it and see. Because if they're like, we like it, but change this, then I'd rewrite it and send it back in and see how it goes. Because if they're showing interest, that's awesome, and just see how it goes. Unless it's really important to you that it be a certain way, and then that's okay, submit it somewhere else. It's your story, and there's some catch-alls that aren't, like there's certain topics that aren't covered in picture books, like, but, and that's kind of why I said that at the beginning, there's not like a one size, fits all, except for very extreme situations. Forward. Okay, so I'm going to end the recorded part here, and then we can, we'll stop recording, and then those who came, if anyone wants to discuss specific ideas for their stories. That way we won't have it, recorded and put online. But, thank you for everyone who's attending, and I'll let Annie wrap.
Yeah. Yeah, so before we stop there, I'm just going to say that's it for tonight's session. And as always, thank you for stopping in and showing your support. If you, there we go. If you want to check out any of the other events that we host, go to scbwi.org. You're looking for regions, you're looking for Houston, and I can add a link to the chat. I think most of us are in this area. We know how to find that, right? If you're interested in registering for any of our monthly meetings, which are also provided at no cost, go ahead and check out our blog, read up on the upcoming speaker, Margaret, who is here tonight. She writes that blog, and she has the honor of speaking to these agents and editors. So it's pretty cool that you get the skinny on who they really are behind, their big job. So I can link the address to that, but really, honestly, all you have to do is go to our main SCBWI page under the cleverly titled Read Our Blog caption, and there you go. Let me see. While you're there, go ahead and hit the follow button, please, so that you can just have our blog pop up for you every time Margaret writes another one. That'd be great. There'll be more interviews with authors, illustrators, agents, and editors, and one of them might be the spark that you need. And speaking of sparks, I told you last time that we got together that Kay and I had attended an online version of North Carolina's Ignite the Spark, and having attended one, we loved it. It was a great way to get the words out, the illustrations on paper, get your voice heard, because after the 30-minute prompt, everybody's writing the prompt or illustrating the prompt off of the ones they choose. And then anyone who wants to can read or share what they were inspired with. We voted for our own name for it because we can't steal theirs. And we landed on Houston Liftoff. And so we'll be coming together to write and illustrate online on the second Tuesday of each month. So go online to our site and find it, register. I hope to see you guys all next month for that one, right? I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording.
Before you finish recording, the next picture book study will be over age categories and picture books, like kind of different themes, word count, word choice. So hope to see y'all there. It'll be on the 25th from 6 to 7:30.
Okay, awesome. Okay, closing off the recording, and thank you guys.
Cool.